If I'm always thinking about that big stage, then I'm annoyed with the stage I'm at right now. And I don't want to be annoyed. I love life and I love the people that are willing to give me a shot right now. I'm looking for just that one person, that one podcast host, that one person in my inbox, that whatever the stage is, right? That one person commenting on it in a Facebook group. What can I say to them? How can I lay that brick perfectly for them so that one day, yeah, I've got that wall, I've got that big stage.
This is the podcast for the entrepreneur who wants to make a big impact, who doesn't shy away from hard work, but also wants to enjoy life along the way. Hi, I'm Heather Sager, former executive turned entrepreneur, and I've spent the last 20 years working with premium brands on sales, marketing, and communication. And I've learned that when you become a magnet with your message, you only need a hint of hustle to achieve your goals. Get ready to be inspired and ignited each week with tangible strategies on sales, speaking, marketing, and so much more. This is the Hint of Hustle podcast. Let's go. Well, hey, friend, welcome back to another episode. This week, we're doing a case study by my friend, the incredible Liz Wilcox. I'll tell you all about it here in a moment. But as you're listening to this episode today, y'all, it's a very, very exciting time. If you're listening to this the week that this episode goes live, something magical is coming, and I could not be more excited. If you listen to this show, obviously you like listening to podcasts, so I have something really special for you, and that is a private podcast that is not this podcast. It's a separate one. It's a private, secret one called Becoming the Known Authority. If you are an expert, if you have your own business and you're looking to be seen more as the credible authority, you want to get more into speaking on stages. You're like, I want to be that person that everyone thinks about. And maybe it's not like you're trying to be the Beyonce of your industry, but maybe you're like, I want to be able to be that person people think of when they think of my topic. You want to be referred. You want to stop chasing all those opportunities and finding your perfect person and start attracting your perfect person. You've been asking questions around what does it take to really become that person that speaks on stages? How do I talk about my content in a way that really resonates with my ideal person and makes them want to take action? It's probably one of the reasons you listen to me and my podcast. If that's you, I've lined up my absolute best of the best trainings that I have only taught like behind closed doors for paying clients or inside one of my paid workshop series. I am laying all the juicy details out of exactly what it takes to become that known authority and speak magnetically on stages in this private podcast training. So if you want to get your hands on it, I'm also, as a gift for you, it's coming out and then it'll be my birthday week. I'm throwing a birthday party and birthday week where I am doing live coaching sessions to actually help you dial in what is your speaking topic and what kind of stages should you be targeting in 2023 to get the most out of your efforts. Because I believe the time you spend on stage should give you more freedom and flexibility off stage. So if you want to get your hands on this training and that private workshop experience where I'm going to help you get those ideas out of your head and nail in your signature topic, head on over to thespeakerco.com/authority. I needed to peek at my little paper here to make sure I didn't get that messed up. thespeakerco.com/authority. You can also find the link in today's podcast show notes. This is going to be so good, y'all. It's going to be so good. And I hope to see you there. For today, what I wanted to do was I wanted to show you some examples of how not only speaking can help accelerate your business, I also wanted to show you examples of what happens when you start building momentum. And that's why the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be sharing with you some of my clients who have gone through my programs over the last few years, share with you some of their results and how they've been approaching speaking. Starting with today, Liz Wilcox, who has been on the show before. She came, actually, both of my guests the next 2 weeks have been on the show before, but now we're talking about the speaking side, which is super freaking cool. But Liz Wilcox, she's an email marketing strategist and keynote speaker, which is something that she's added to her bio here in the last few years. She shows small business owners how to build online relationships, package up their magic, and turn it into emails that people want to read, and most importantly, purchase from. I'm going to say Liz is like my spirit animal of what I do for people with saying their shit out loud with their voice. She does that, helping them do that in email. What we're talking about today is how Liz has captured her own magic, someone who is great with words, but she knew she wanted to make a bigger impact and reach more people for her programs and for her business. She wanted to do that by speaking more on stages. So Liz, we'll talk about it in the episode. She is one of my former clients. She came through my program literally right when the world shut down in the pandemic. She was part of my quarantine cohort. Liz built her signature talk and has now become a staple in her business. She has spoken on more than 100 stages just in the last 12 months. And from it, the impact that she's had, it's inspiring to me. I'm like, whoa, y'all, I got to keep up. I got to keep up here. And I want to show you what's possible. This interview is going to light you up. You're going to be on fire. You're going to be so excited about what's possible for you in your topic. I will not make you wait anymore. Let's get to my interview with the incredible Liz Wilcox. This is the podcast for the entrepreneur who wants to make a big impact, who doesn't shy away from hard work, but also... Well, Liz, welcome back officially to the show. I'm so happy to see you today. Thanks for being here.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait to talk about this. I love speaking.
I know you do love speaking. It's been so great. You're a second time guest on the podcast. And here's what's interesting. I look back at our notes. I'm pretty confident the last time you were on the podcast I know it had a different name, but I actually think it had the original name. Was it still Finding Your It Factor when you were on?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's been Heather and I are OG friends. We go back a while.
In internet years, it's like we've known each other our entire internet lives.
Right.
Okay, for those of you who might be newer listeners to the show that might not have heard back that original episode, which we will link in the show notes because Liz talks all things about simple launching, which I have adopted that mantra. That was what our original episode was about. But can you share a little bit about what you do, the Fresh Princess of Email?
Yeah. So, that feeling you get when you listen to an amazing podcast like this one, and, somebody comes on and they're talking about email marketing and they're shouting, for every dollar you spend with email, you can get $40 in return. Go, 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 go. And you get super hyped up. So you log into ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit or whatever the heck you use. And then you promptly feel kind of dumb because you have no idea what to say. Well, what's up? I'm Liz Wilcox, and I help eliminate that problem. I make email writing super simple.
You do. You make it super simple and fun, and you have a pretty freaking amazing membership. I want to talk about that real quick because the business model that you run, freaking love it. And that's going to be a big part of what we talk about here on today's show is around how speaking can serve different business models. Can you just for a moment talk about your membership?
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to shout out if you thought that intro was awesome. Heather and I used to practice that together. Obviously I've hired her. I love the way she teaches speaking. And that was something that we came up together in a group cohort of something she had. So if you are looking for something like that, Heather is your gal. So see, we just love each other. We just help each other out and promo each other. Anyway, I have something called email marketing membership, and it's a weekly newsletter template membership. So every single week I send you a plug and play template with a video walkthrough and, different business examples. So for example, I just wrote it today. It was like one was from e-commerce. The other one was a faith-based blogger. So you can actually see how it would work for you. And it's 2 years old now. I have over 3,000 members. It feels wild and crazy. And it's just $9 a month. And yeah, I've definitely used speaking, used podcast interviews, on-stage interviews, private trainings, all of that to go out and find my members.
Yes. Okay. I love this. So okay. On that note, I'm going to pivot and we're going to take it back here a couple years. We joke that we've known each other forever in dog years or in internet years. Let's go back to when you and I first met it was like late 2019, early 2020.
19. Now, yeah, I think it was about 4 years ago at the time of this recording. Like,
Yeah. So
I think it
it's
was
been a
like
hot minute.
spring 2019.
Yeah. So why don't you share a little bit around what was it about speaking that was interesting to you and in particularly what you were trying to create?
Yeah. So listen up, y'all. When I found out I could click a mouse and make money online, it was like whiplash. I was like, y'all, these rich folks have been lying. You need to get in on this. And when Heather and I first met, I was an RV travel blogger. And so, I had courses around RV travel, a book, et cetera, et cetera. And I had just launched something, and I had 141 people on the wait list, and I made 141 sales. And we talk a lot about how I did that in the previous episode, which is in the show notes. But what I realized was that was really atypical. That was really, when I tell that story, even now, people usually their jaw drops. If you're not familiar, typical launches do 1% to 5%, maybe 10% if you're really, really good. That was 100%, which is wild. And so when I realized my friends were struggling with this, I thought, well, it's just email marketing. And they said, oh, there's no such thing as just email marketing. But in my mind, it was that gift that I had, right? It was that thing that just came so naturally to me. And so, couple that with oh my gosh, I can make money online. What? I knew I had to go all in. So I mentioned all that to say, I know I have a message, and I knew back then, and I know now that I want to get it out to as many people as possible. I know I cannot play small because I joke, oh, these rich folks, they've been lying, move over Jeff Bezos. Y'all, I grew up so poor. I have been supporting my mother financially since I was 16. It's always been make or break for me. And so when I think about those other people out there, and maybe you're one of them as you listen, where you're like, oh, I have this certain circumstance. I know I've got to figure this thing out online so that I can, move to the next level of life. And so that's why I chose speaking, because I knew I needed to get the word out there. And I knew if I played small, I was doing a disservice to the people that truly needed my gift out there.
I love that. I love it. I think that's one of those things that's so universal. And I also think it's hard for people to say that out loud, is that it almost feels like when we say, I have something to share, like I know I'm meant to share this thing, it almost feels like we feel some guilt around it. Like, who am I to share that? Did you have any of that at the get-go?
No. If you've met me or, keep listening, you'll see why. For me, though, it really was, looking at all the people that came before me. And I tend to follow a really low information diet. So I don't consume a lot of content. I just, I hear Heather saying, oh yeah, I quit my corporate job. I really wanted to teach people this. I hear other people, even, celebrities, look at some of my favorite people to follow are, musical artists. I'm like, well, they're out there just talking about shaking butts with no shame. Like, surely I can get out there and use my voice to actually change people's lives. And for me, again, going back to really needing the money and needing to get the message out there, whether I was doing RV travel or, this email marketing thing or whatever the heck, I didn't have a lot of room for head junk. I had to do it. When you think about your mom, and if you don't make the rent, she's going homeless. You know what I mean? Like, there's no real room for head trash when you don't have a choice but to make money. So yeah. I don't say that in a cocky way. It's just came from my circumstances.
Yeah. It's almost like, I think a lot of people feel that they have to then feel they're supposed to feel guilty by having that big ambition and knowing deep down, like, I know I'm meant to share big things. I know, like, this is the community where we accept that we have big messages to share and it's okay. And we raise our hands and we go out and frickin' do it. So I love that. So I remember you taking, okay, baby, I'm going to take over the internet. Literally what you said, like when we first talked on Zoom about this. I'm curious, when you think about speaking and getting your message out there in the big way, were you thinking like, I want to be a keynote at a conference? Or did you have a different definition in mind around what that meant? I always say, everyone knows this by now, my definition of a stage is simply a platform to share your message, whether that's a conference stage, a virtual summit, a podcast, like wherever you can show up and share your message, that is a stage. And in our virtual world, we have so many available to us. But it's always fascinating to me because when people hear me as a speaking coach, they instantly put me in the container of a keynote conference stage, which you and I both know it's way more than that. What was your initial goal or your initial picture around what bringing that bigger message looked like?
Yeah, of course, I'm just a very ambitious person. So, when I think about a stage, yes, of course, my mind goes to, Grant Cardone, 10X. I'm sitting next to Kevin Hart talking about email marketing. That's the big, big dream. But I also live in the real world and know where I sit today and know where I sat 3 years ago. And I was also thinking about private trainings, virtual retreats, podcasts. I had done podcasts in my previous business to grow, and I knew I was really good at them. I knew I love talking, right? So, and I have that message. And that's one of the reasons I went with Heather. I was like, okay, I have A, B, and C. How do I put them together so they flow? So when I get on a podcast, when I get on a stage, I sound like, wow, that lady really knows what she's talking about, right? And so I had a lot of different images in my head. It wasn't just the one thing. For me, I'm always, what do they say? I'm very determined. Like I have the vision in my head, but I'm flexible on the details of how to get there. And given my previous experience, I knew the word stage meant a lot of different things. And even if I get on a podcast and I'm just talking to the host and I'm just convincing the host to try email, then that's the stage I need to be on that day, right?
I love that idea right there that you just brought up. It's like something that we don't normally think about. So often when we think about speaking, we think, how can we reach more people? And when you have a message that you want to share and you want to make an impact, sometimes that impact is just one person. That relationship with the host. I mean, not only could that be profound for them using email, but the doors they can open when they become effective with email and then sing your praises, like that's like a ripple effect that really, really carries on. I think it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I'll add one more thing. For me, I joke about, sitting next to Kevin Hart on the stage, in a stadium. Y'all, you can't get to that vision if you're not just doing the day to day. You can't jump there. That's not going to happen for me if I'm not willing to sit and be present in the moment and be present with the person that's right in front of me. If I'm always thinking about that big, big stage, then I'm annoyed with the stage I'm at right now. And I don't want to be annoyed. I love life and I love the people that are willing to give me a shot right now. And so I always go back to this story. Will Smith shares it. He talks about his dad knocked down a wall in this building and they had to rebuild it. And he says, Dad, it's impossible. The wall is gone. Like, let it go. And he said, son, you don't build a wall. You just lay a brick as perfectly as a brick can be laid. And one day you'll have a wall. And that's the way that I look at speaking on stages. That's the way I look at, that big, Kevin Hart, he's going to know me one day, right? I'm not looking for Kevin Hart. I'm looking for just that one person, that one podcast host, that one person in my inbox, that whatever the stage is, right? That one person commenting in a Facebook group. What can I say to them? How can I lay that brick perfectly for them so that one day, I've got that wall, I've got that big stage.
This is a great example of, I say this all the time, is you have to be confident and you have to pair that confidence with humility. One of the big mistakes that people make when they have that really high ambition to speak on big stages is they start acting from ego, right? They want to be on that big stage. So I'm going to act like I'm there, which means I'm better than other people, or this other little stage is peanuts. And that's not how you get those big stages. It's treating every single opportunity to show up, do your best, serve a message. Like if you can't make an impact on a smaller stage, how can you expect to make an impact that people talk about on a bigger stage? So I love that you model that. And I freaking love that you brought that up. You did mention that you were already good at podcasts. You like to speak. You were already good at speaking. So what was it that made you go, I actually need to learn how to do this so that I can give it bigger impact? Like, what was that motivator for you?
Okay, as you listen, and if you don't know me, you might be thinking, "Whoa, this lady's really confident. She's slightly cocky." I'm not I'm not trying to come off that way. I actually was mute until the age of 7. Like words did not come naturally to me. I had to learn to speak, and for many, many years and even to this day, I'm terrified of public speaking. Now that we're talking about it, Heather can see my neck is starting to break out. I still get that rash. Heather knows, all about it. The first piece of advice she gave me was when you feel that rash, start scraping your toes in your shoes. I still do that. And so it's not, it's not this thing that just came naturally. But I told Heather when we first met and I was trying, debating her program was I know what has gotten me here is not going to get me to the next level. I can only go so far on talent. Michael Jordan only went so far on talent, but he was in the gym. He was, at practice 2, 3, 4 hours before everybody else, because he wanted to be number one. He wanted to get better every single day. What got him here was not going to get him there. And that was the kind of, approach I wanted to take. That was the kind of discipline I was willing to put in. And I knew Heather had something and she knew something that I didn't know. I was just going on pure talent and a little bit of bravery and confidence, but I knew I needed something actually succinct. I needed to learn a little bit more about the art of speaking. And that's what really pushed me over the edge.
Yeah. So let's talk about what we created together. We created your signature talk inside my group program. Let's talk about that signature talk. When you first created that talk, did you think that was going to be the thing that you would continually talk about over and over again? Or did you just like, I'm just going to put this thing together because she said I should?
I knew it was going to be something, it was going to be the foundation of my teachings. And I came to Heather with a pretty well planned out kind of methodology, a framework. If you don't have a framework, I suggest taking a look at what you do and putting it into a framework. I'm sure Heather talks about that in her program now. I remember her talking about it, back then. And so I knew that it was going to be the foundation, that signature piece, but I also knew, what I can talk about in 20 minutes, 40 minutes is not all I can talk about. And so I knew I would have one-offs. And now I have over a dozen trainings and they all sound really great, but they're all based off of that signature talk, or they're all, the ... dots, what's next of that, or the prereqs of the main conversation.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you first put together that talk. Do you remember, did you get tripped up anywhere as we were going through that initial creation process? I'm scratching my head now thinking back. I don't know what the answer to the question is going to be. So this is kind of risky.
Well, for me, I think it's the plight of every speaker and every person who's passion driven and wants to help other people is you just want to give them everything. And even today, I built the signature talk 3 years ago. Even today, I'm like, oh, I got to cut that. Liz, you don't actually need to say that. That's too much information for them. And yeah, I think it was 2.5 years. So about a few months ago, I went back and I revised it after 2 years of giving this talk over 100 times. I said, oh, Liz, you got to trim the fat, baby. Like this has gone on too long. People are exhausted. You got to pass out like cans of Mountain Dew after this because it's so tiring. So that's where, I got tripped up. And even today, I think, oh, I could cut that or let me add that back in. You're always tweaking, right?
Yeah, I think, well, let's talk about that piece, because the tendency for most experts is that they continually recreate their talks. Most people are building their decks the night before or constantly feeling like they need to do something different. Did you ever have that desire or that, like, even after you built the signature talk, I need to build something custom? How did you navigate that?
I just said no, like they used to teach us in DARE, just say no. Heather taught me, just say no, don't do that. You can, when you know your signature talk forward and backwards, you can just tweak on the fly, y'all. I didn't know what questions Heather was going to ask me. This isn't even my signature talk. I talk about email, right? But, when you say certain things over and over, you give it 4 or 5 times, when you just can say, okay, I know enough and I'm not an idiot. I don't need to tweak my slides. Even saying things like, oh, this slide should say this. I didn't have enough time to tweak it, but it should say this. People live in the real world. The pandemic was terrible, but that's one thing that came out of the pandemic is that people are a little more lax when it comes to technology, slides, flubbing up, having your cat in the background, accidentally turning into a cat. You remember that? With that lawyer.
I love that video.
But people understand you can't, unless you're getting paid tens of thousands of dollars, you don't have to tweak. And I was never really tempted. It's only now, actually, after 3 years of this signature talk, I got on the phone with somebody the other day and I said, oh, I have to tweak this. That's the first time in 3 years I've given that signature talk almost 200 times. And this is the first time where I thought, yeah, I need to change this slide and that slide.
Yeah. I love that you say this because I think it's really an ego play that comes in where we think that everything we do has to be customized. This is also the same problem a lot of coaches or educators have that go from one-on-one into group training is they're like, oh, it has to be custom. Like I have to get to know them and I have to do it special. And spoiler alert, y'all, like once you have your messaging down and those talking points in a signature talk, like by the way, I teach y'all how to do this, how you customize it through examples and stories and stuff. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. I was pointing, if you're just listening to the podcast, you're not watching the video. I was literally like pointing at Heather like that
raising
part.
Hand. My turn. Give me the mic.
P-A-R-T, that part, you've got to. And what I loved about working with Heather and getting the practice was, I got all that gross, nasty, trial runs out of the way. So by the time I started, doing it in public, I could vary the content. I could say, oh, today I'm talking to e-commerce folks. Here's what I want to say right here. And, oh, now we're talking to authors. Here's what I want to say about that. And if you look at my business, I'm niched in the email marketing, but we talked about my membership. I have over 3,000 people in that membership. Let me tell you something. They're not all course creators. I do have those e-commerce. Y'all, there is a nun, a rabbi, and a pastor from Georgia named Carlton in there. I don't know.
This is the start of a joke. It's like a start of like a very famous joke.
There's a BDSM lady in there. I mean, there's all sorts of folks. But the talk is the same. They've all come in through podcasts or private trainings of basically that signature talk that Heather and I, work together to craft. And it's the same thing over and over. I can insert those examples. And something that I love to do as, when I'm going on a podcast, like today I was on a podcast about makers. So I had a little note card and I jotted down, a couple things that were specific to that audience. And I thought about, oh, well, I love this Etsy shop. And I even wore 2 things that I bought off Etsy to remind myself as I was going to give those examples, right? And so you can definitely do that as you get on stages, ask the person who is listening, what do they like? What do you think? Describe your audience to me. And they will give you the examples themselves often.
They really will. I think those, by the way, what she's referencing these are power prep questions that when you have your signature talk down, your main talking points, there's a list of little mini questions you can go through to get yourself in the right frame of reference and to customize your talk without changing your talk. So that was a really beautiful example. Let's talk about what your talk has done for your business. And I want to talk about this in a couple areas. One of the reasons I wanted to have Liz on is not only is she amazing and she's giving you so many things to think about around what's possible with your speaking. But you also, it's been a few years since you went through the program. And I think a lot of times when people talk about their programs, they talk about their trainings, they don't really get real with sometimes how long it takes to get results and how the results keep going. So I like to show examples of immediate wins, longer term wins. I'm a huge believer that speaking is a skill, and the more that you practice, the better and better that you get. So let's go back 3 years and walk us through some of the what happened for you right on the coattails of creating that talk. Where did you start? And then let's start exploring what's happened since.
Yeah, one word comes to mind and it's cringe. I think that's what the cool kids say. I don't know. I just feel like at first it was just me trying to get out there, thinking about that mission I had, and how can I find people? I know I've got this message. And, I was stumbling, and, I wasn't able to just off the cuff, oh yeah, makers should do this. And, it was very not good, kind of like how I'm starting this answer, right? Because it's a brand new question that hasn't been asked of me. Heather and I have the meta thing in common. So the first year, well, let's talk about the first 6 months. I just started pitching myself. I know Christina Lankowski's been on your podcast. Check her out. I did hire her to pitch me on podcasts, and she guarantees 2 a month. And for me, I thought, okay, that's kind of a stretch for money, but if I can pitch myself at the same time as she's pitching me, I'll make double my money, right? It'll really be worth it. And so I started getting on these podcasts and, practicing in public, and I just got better. And one thing that I realized is if I did a very good job, if I was able to wow my host, I could turn that one episode into 2 or 3. They would either ask me back, and going through Heather's program, I was able to put my stuff into buckets, and we only talk about one bucket at a time so that it leads into, oh, Liz, we've got to have you back to talk about X. You hinted about it, and I turned it into 2 podcasts. Or I even said this yesterday. I was on a podcast with someone I'd never met. Somebody referred me, and they said, oh, this is the first stranger I've ever had on the podcast. I said, hit record. We're about to be best friends. And by the end, she said, wow, that was so good. You're so well spoken. And I said, well, if you really mean that, can you introduce me to some friends? And she sent me 2 people. She introduced me via email to 2 people. So one of the things I got really good at in those first 6 months was taking the talk that I workshop with Heather and the gang and breaking it up, taking it back out of the buckets or putting it back in buckets and doing that on the episode. And then again, just being kind of shameless. Oh, if you really mean that, can you introduce me to a friend? Or, hey, I love this message. I'm so glad it resonated with you. I'm so glad you learned something. Is there anybody else who has an audience that you're friends with that could use this? We both know the power of email marketing. That's why you had me on your show. I'd love to continue to spread that mission. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Heather, I gotta email Heather for you. Right. And just, again, going back to your purpose, because it seems scary, and public speaking is scary in itself, but, being kind of unashamedly or unapologetic about getting that message out there is really important. You are your own hype man. There's no one coming out before the stage to hype you up. You have to do that yourself. Yeah. So that happened in the first 6 months, and it's just kind of spiraled from there. I know almost all my leads come from private trainings, podcasts, digital summits, or in-person stages as well. And in the last 3 years, my email list has grown from like 300 to almost 8,000, and it's over 50% customers.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh, that is so good. Okay, the hype thing that you brought up, I remember very clearly us talking about that in the last episode. It was one of my favorite things. I talk about all the time around you have to be the hype. You can't expect anyone else to. If you can't get excited about your topic and excited about what you're doing, how can you expect other people to do it? So I freaking love that. I wrote down a couple things that you said that I want to hit on. One, when you talk about the asking boldly for the referral, so many people are like, I'm so scared of that. And you do it so well. I call that the speaking snowball, is that speaking opportunities should create more speaking opportunities. Absolutely. So many people are like, okay, I'm going to say this. I hate the question, but it's one I get all the time. It's like, Heather, how do I find speaking opportunities? Heather, how do I get on the speaking circuit? And I giggle because the best way to get speaking opportunities is to start speaking. It's like a total chicken and an egg, but get your booty on a stage or on a podcast. That is the best way to get more. Trying to cold find them. It is a way. You start there, but the snowball is a big thing. But what I want to hit on is you mentioned the first thing that you said was cringe. When you first got started. Okay? I want to go back to that because here's what I know to be true. So many entrepreneurs get stuck in this perfection trap, and they think, oh, if I sign up for a program, if I work with Heather or someone else to craft this talk, then I won't sound like an idiot. Then I'll skip the process where I sound like a fuddy-duddy on stage. And there's some truth and it's still going to be a little bit cringe. Can you talk about that piece, what you mean when you look back and you're cringy? Because at the time it wasn't cringy.
Right. Well, I mean, I was cringing a little bit, but I knew, again, working with Heather and getting that signature talk, I had that confidence piece. Like you said, if you're thinking of joining, like, oh yeah, if I only have this. So I knew I had that. So that did help with some confidence, but it's still cringy. It's still all brand new. It's still learning how to walk. It's still, oh gosh, Heather in the back of my head, this is where you insert that mini story, or you've said too much, Liz, take it, bring it back, stop talking, allow for a pause, all those things. So of course, I have that in my head, but really it is that practice makes perfect. I mean, I did a podcast interview today and I got off and I thought, you freaking nailed that, Liz. You sound like such a professional. Like, wow. I mean, I was taken back by myself, but that's because I know what bad is. I know what it's like to hang up the phone and think, oh man, your voice was shaking the whole time. You were staring at yourself in the Zoom mirror. The dog was barking, this, that, your internet went out. You had to turn your camera off. You're sweating. I went through all that bad stuff. So, allow yourself to just go through the mud, because one day you're going to hang up the Zoom call or you're going to walk off that stage and you're going to be like, whoa, I am an actual badass.
I love that so much. And we all want that moment. I would argue everyone's had their version of that moment, but being able to have that on public display, as in like you did that on a stage, that is a high unlike anything else. I think anybody who's drawn to speaking, they know kind of that high that you get when you're in your mode on a stage and like jiving with an audience. Like that feels, it's mildly addictive. Like that's a really, really good feeling. I crave more and more of that. Are you finding that too? I mean, you're doing a crap ton of speaking events every year.
Oh yeah, it kind of is addicting, but also it's so awesome to think, oh, I just helped that person, especially when you can start to get into private trainings or in-person retreats or something, and you see that person, you see the light bulb go off, and it's like, yeah, I did that. And that is just as addicting as, the high you get from talking on stage or knowing, oh yeah, I nailed that piece of my talk. And it's just priceless to me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier you're doing virtual summits and private trainings. What are some of the stages that you speak on now, like types of stages, and what are your favorites?
I think my favorite is still a podcast, because I love talking to the host one-on-one and seeing all those light bulb moments go off, seeing them, write notes, and they getting that direct feedback of, I've never heard anyone explain email that simply. I'm going to go write my newsletter right now, Liz. And that feels really good. I also love doing the private trainings where now you can only have one signature talk, but I have 2 or 3 that I've given dozens of times that people request. And those are really fun because I've turned them into workshops where, they're a little longer, 2.5 hours. And I see people working on them and I'm getting paid to do them. Someone pays me to come into their private membership, or we do like a JV thing. And that feels good, not only to get paid to speak, finally the dream, right? That's what everybody wants, but also to be able to see those people live working on something that previously feels like nails on a chalkboard, and to be able to hear them say, Liz, you're making this fun, which you think email and fun, like that doesn't really go together, but to see that live is so amazing. I really love that.
Yeah, me too. I think similar thing where you mentioned before that we both do meta, right? You do email, talk about email. I do speaking, talk about speaking. There is kind of an element of that. I always love that moment where you leave a training and people give you immediate feedback. One of the things that I love about you is you do a really good job capturing that feedback via screenshots or people writing in. How do you leverage that to get more speaking opportunities?
I didn't know I did that well. So thank you. That immediate feedback she was just talking about is so nice to hear.
It is.
If you're not watching, now I'm blushing. For me, Can you ask me the question again? How do I leverage that for more speaking opportunities?
Well, and just in general, how do you leverage that? Because you do screenshots. I'll serve this up a little different way for you. You recently launched a very sexy page on your website, all dedicated to speaking, and this was so okay.
Oh
So
yeah, I did.
yeah. So, oh yeah, you did. And it's great. I always joked inside my program, especially when Liz went through it a couple years ago, I was like, yo, you don't need a speaking page. I still to this day use a Google Doc. Like, don't overcomplicate it. Like, people hide behind their fancy. And I love that you gave yourself time for speaking, but now you are fancy and I freaking love it. Let's talk about your speaking page. And I just want you to talk about
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So one thing that I do, of course, now I have the speaking page, lizwilcox.com/speaking. Just swipe it, steal it. Anything I create is yours. And so I've been slowly but surely capturing those screenshots, putting them in a Google Drive, capturing enough video of myself to make that speaking page. But really, the one thing that I've done to get more speaking gigs and to capture that awesomeness, so to speak, that social proof, is in my email signature. If you email me and I reply to you, it says, P.S. Liz is trying to get on more podcasts. Do you know of one? She's often told she's the best guest they've had. We can't share screenshots of that, so creating the intrigue, but you can go to her media page and check it out, and it will link to that speaking page.
yeah.
And I get so many opportunity, people I would never think had a podcast, or I would never, oh, do you know so and so, let me introduce you. And these are the greatest introductions because they're people that have seen results. They're people of my community, and they're, oh my gosh, do you know Liz Wilcox? Basically like, you're an idiot if you don't. Book her now. Like, I've been listening to your podcast forever. I want her on your show. Everybody needs her. And those are so amazing. Or even people in my community. I had a podcast interview. I never would have thought to pitch myself. I never would have thought to Google this podcast. It was for goat farmers, specifically creating goat products like goat milk, goat soap, things like that. And we named the episode like the goat of marketing email, like greatest of all time, right? And I got so many amazing leads, so many members in my membership, like, wow, you made email make sense. And so using that sort of intrigue in my PS and saying, oh, I couldn't say like, oh yeah, so-and-so said I was the best. Like, that's, invasion of privacy. They might not, that might be like, oh, well, I thought I was the best. They told me that too. Right. But using that intrigue and then sending them to the speaking page where there are screenshots of, the chat in a digital summit or an in-person, I've got a video, has worked wonders for me. I hardly ever pitch myself anymore. And I haven't in like 18 months.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's the thing that I think that's the goal. A lot of people want those opportunities coming to them. It's why I use that word magnetic so much. The goal is, right, you having opportunities come to you so you can be choosy with your yeses. And I love how you did that social proof piece. One of the hardest things getting started as a speaker is, your stuff is really, really good, but to tell other people that it's good, it's kind of like a dime a dozen. Everybody thinks they're awesome. But when you have proof that other people say that not only is your content good, but you delivering content is good, that is currency that is unlike anything else. Because what's fascinating is there are so many podcasts and so many stages available and so many people who say they can teach, but there is a shortage of good teachers. There's a shortage of people who are good at explaining and make it fun and exciting. So if you can be that person, you create those you essentially create a whole army of brand ambassadors, Liz.
What Heather's talking about is so true. And I'm not just saying that because I want you to join her program. It so is like, if you have the framework, yeah, that's great. Your content's great, but if you can't deliver it in this magnetic way, it's really a disservice. And of course everybody has to go through the crappy stage. Everybody has to go through oh gosh, that wasn't what I thought it could be type of stage. But once you get to that point, it is gold. Like, I have my membership and I do quarterly guest experts. And there's been a few people that I said yes to, and then they delivered their talk. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is not going up on the dashboard because it wasn't up to my standard. It didn't have the same tone as my membership does. Now that I know that I can do it well, and I've, paid money to get really good at this, and I've practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, I have very high standards. And often those stages that you want to get on probably have high standards too. And so if you get nothing out of this podcast, practice, 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 lay those bricks. One day you will get there. I believe it. If I can do it, coming from not even speaking until I was 7, being terrified, I'm still scared most of the time. I would say 80% of the time, I still get that heart flutter and have to scrape my toes in my shoes. If I can do it, I know you can too.
I love that. Okay. That is just like a mic. That is a mic drop. That is a mic drop. We're going to, please don't actually drop your mic because you need that for another podcast interview, I'm sure. Oh, you are incredible. That was really, really good advice. We've already talked about your website a lot, but the best place for people to go to learn more about email marketing from you is?
Yeah, of course, I'm an email marketer, so I'd love for you to join my list. You can go directly to lizwilcox.com. In the top right-hand corner, there's a hot pink button. You cannot miss it. It's going to give you an entire welcome sequence already written for you to take and make your own. 3 newsletter examples if you are, like I said at the beginning, like, what do I write? And you're also going to get 52 subject lines because writing from scratch totally sucks. lizwilcox.com, hot pink button.
Yeah. And as she mentioned before, her speaking page is awesome. I use it as an example inside my program, which, by the way, will teach you how to create your own set of resources around how you show up online so people can see you and be like, oh my gosh, this is legit. This person stands out in a different way. So you're incredible, Liz. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being so generous and sharing so much with our audience. Any last final advice for someone who's exploring this idea of, is now the right time for me getting started with speaking? Like, is that really relevant in my business? What should they be thinking about or do?
Why wait, darling? Why wait? Just get going. You have a message and there are people out there waiting to hear it just from you. So you better get going right now.
Get on it. I love it. I love it. At the time of this episode drops, I've just released that I'm doing a free audio training. It's a private podcast that's out called Becoming the Known Authority. And here's the incredible thing is, Liz, I could not have planned this better because you are the authority. Like, you very much have stepped in and said, I am the email gal. And not just in a way where you've done it to serve you and to be like, oh, I wear that title. You've done it in a way of helping one single person at a time, really caring about the people that you serve. That's how you become the known authority. So if y'all want to learn how to do that for yourself in your own industry, check out the link in the show notes of here. I'm going to give you all access. I'm giving it away for free of exactly what it takes to get started with speaking. And then if it's a right fit for you, and now is the time, I'll give you information around how to join us in the next round of my Signature Talk Accelerator, where I'll teach you to do exactly what Liz and I did together and create your signature talk so you can start rocking it on stages. All right, Liz, thanks for coming today. I appreciate you. I can't wait to share your story with all of our people. Y'all, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Hint of Hustle podcast. If you're in a season of hustle, consider this the permission slip you didn't need to take a beat. Go on a walk, stretch, call a friend, go reheat that coffee for the 4th time and actually drink it. Because those big dreams you're chasing, they require the best version of you. And if those goals include expanding your audience, establishing your industry credibility, and selling your premium price programs, the best way to tackle this is through speaking. Your voice is your best brand asset, and we'll teach you how to use it as a marketing tool. Head on over to thespeakercode.com/start, and I'll see you there.